entities that are that support Julian Assange from outside of this country, but apparently in this country, the Democratic Party, which pretends to be, one based on democratic principles, doesn't seem to support the cause of Julian Assange and what it says for freedom of press. And I'm a president of a local Democratic club here, Field of Vern Democratic Club, based on Bernie Sanders. And we put a resolution out to the Democratic Party in April at the convention to the California state, and they shot it down. So I represent the left of the political party, but I'm also a delegate within the LA County Party and the state party, and they do not want to have anything to do with this. So what I wanted to know was, is there anything that you can tell Democratic Party leaders that are more interested in, and basically how they can reconcile their apparent disdain for one of their boogeymen, Julian Assange, for what they think was aiding the popularity of Trump. What can they do if they really actually care about basic democratic principles like freedom of speech that supposedly this country is founded on?
And are you directing this question to anyone in particular?
Anyone in particular.
Well, if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to take a stab at it since there was for a long while I was an elected representative of the Progressive Caucus of the California State Democratic Party. That was long ago and am no longer affiliated with them, but I will say that Bernie Sanders has taken a position on this. You are a Bernie person. When you look at the party itself, all I can say is if you want change, it comes from the grassroots. And so we know what Bernie Sanders stands for. He's not the only one. They're the squad. What I encourage people to do, write to Attorney General Merrick Garland. Also, write to your congressional representatives, your state representatives. And that's pretty much the only way you're going to get change. You've got to organize for change. You can't just rely on the party to take a position on this.
If I can add that unfortunately, like every human organization, the Democratic Party is prone to hypocrisy. And when Julian Assange was an equal opportunity exposer and chose to release information about the Democratic National Committee, and people have speculated and tried to excuse Hillary Clinton's defeat and laying her failure to campaign in key states at the feet of Julian Assange, as if he was the problem. There are many, when I speak to some of my Democratic friends, who wince when they hear that I vigilantly defend Julian Assange, because they continue to perpetuate the myth, and they even are blind to the notion that if you're going to really believe that there's one road to freedom, which is knowledge, then all knowledge has to be taken, all knowledge has to be digested, and the chips will fall where they may. And that's what Julian Assange has believed in. It would be a credit to recognize that Julian Assange is not playing politics, is not favoring one political party over another, or one country over another, or one ideology over another. So I think the Democratic Party has a lot to learn when it comes to living up to its own principles. Julian Assange would be such an important step forward for this Department of Justice, this administration, and elected officials in California and in all the states and cities that these gentlemen have visited. There is a tragic, shameful silence across the political spectrum in the United States, and I hope anyone on the Democratic Party that listens to Amy Goodman, and anyone in the Republican Party that listens to Tucker Carlson should take their cue and begin to speak up in favor of Julian Assange.
I think it's important to keep in mind that the reason that Julian Assange is being prosecuted is for what he did in 2010 and 2011, which was to, he and WikiLeaks, publish evidence of US war crimes. People don't know that. They don't understand that, and they get sidetracked by these other issues. And so it is incumbent upon us to educate people, as you said, people in the Democratic Party, other people, that that is what he is being indicted for. That is what he is facing 175 years for, is revealing evidence of war crimes in 2010 and 2011. Period. Full stop.
Since we're in a room with journalists, I have seen an attacks of accusations of being funded by the Russian government, being funded by Assad, being, agents of Kremlin or China. As a journalist, this has been incoming attacks on a lot of us here right now in this room, I'm sure. And so and this is to the defense or the family, with the advent of the technocratic takeover too, with the social media giants and Google and YouTube censoring us from reporting what is the truth in a way that is, like Julian, non-biased, and holding both sides of the aisle and all sides accountable. What do you suggest journalists do when they want to speak the truth but they're afraid of the backlash? There's a lot of fear among independent media because of all of this happening to us, and I think more journalists would actually have the integrity to actually speak out if they actually felt that they had resources and they had support.
So,
Well, we've been at this for 3 years now. This is the 5th tour. When we first started back in Canberra 3 years ago, I just dragged a barrister friend up to Canberra who's got a lot of bonhomie, and we went around to the parliamentarians and we managed to get 2 on board. 3 years later, here we are. Worldwide movement. I just think to rely upon gigantic organisations that have a particular ideology and are associated, an embrace with the government, like Google and Facebook. Facebook is capped now at $1 trillion. It's so valuable to the government and to other people that you just can't go there. You can't expect anything from them, and I don't expect. In fact, I aver the media, and I get, Gabriel and Julie and everybody says I'm a bit silly, but and that phenomenon I first saw with Beppe Grillo and the 5 Star movement. He's had this very clever computer AI expert, Roberto Casaleggio. He's dead now, but they averred the media, held meetings like this, said their bit, and Pepe Grillo's a humorist, so he could put in a bit of fun. And they averred the media and used what facilities in social media there are and they could get hold of. They built in a couple of years from 2% support to 27.5% support and moved into government. So that's, take no notice of them. I don't take any notice. I don't rail against Facebook. I know the phenomenon is, if you read some of the cables from Tunisia, the Tunisian government had open source, and the ambassador, the United States ambassadors, went to the leader, Ben Ali. He said, look, if you want to be close friends with the United States and we'll look after you, it will be a friendly association, you'll change from open source to Microsoft. These organisations are integral to you know, the empire that the United States is. So I don't expect anything from them. Everything that was in Germany, we built with Sabine Dagdelen, who's a member of parliament. She's on the left. However, she's a practical parliamentarian and knows that to get support, you follow the centre line, because that's where power is. If you want to solve a problem, you get both sides together. If you want to begin a new ideology, well, you're by yourself. But in our case, in Gabrielle and my case, we want to solve a particular problem, and for that we need to move carefully along the centre line, wear a tie, be polite. Is that a helpful answer?
Yes.
Ruth had a question.
Yes, prior to when the Barack Obama administration, in retaliation for the presentation of collateral murder and in retaliation for Julian's telling the truth or publishing the truth, prior to when it got the Swedish government to investigate him, did it ever occur to you or to your knowledge to Julian that the U.S. government would go so far in violating the U.S. Constitution and the First Amendment?
Well, you know, I spoke to Julian back then, and a thought occurred to me that these people will shoot you, but I'm not going to tell a child of mine that what you're doing will get you shot or get you pushed off a bridge, particularly when he's taking on a vocation, you know, I try to elevate it a little bit, when he's taking on a principled vocation. Not any vocation. I'm not going to say it's not going to work, or, you know, don't do that, or, you know, come home, have a cup of tea, get a job in the post office. It's not wrong. You just, you mind your P's and Q's and keep your mouth shut and keep your fears to yourself. And if I may say so, Gabrielle, who's nearly 40 now, and Julian, who's nearly 50, and my daughter, who's nearly 6, I think, never, ever, any of them have complained to me. Not once, even though I know Gabrielle's had his problems, and Julian has tremendous problems, but he doesn't ring me up and say, you know, can you get me out of this? Never, not once. Not once. So that strength of spirit, you know, gathers together Gabrielle and Julian and myself and the little girl. That strength of spirit holds us together despite what may eventually happen. In spite of what may eventually happen, we will transcend through spirit.
I would like to amplify something that John said, that this is not a movement of governments, although governments are part of it. This is a movement that's coming from the people up. And if we wish to make a difference, there are all the actions that we can take. But one of the things that is excellent on the AssangeDefense.org site is an answer to all the lies, calumny, and vilification against Julian Assange. I've had people spit in my face who are good Democrats that I would even consider defending this man. But each and every one of those accusations that have been presented against Julian Assange, there is a bullet point listing of them and shows them to be utter fabrications, lies, and absolutely untrue, and that it is incumbent on people everywhere to raise their own consciousness, to educate themselves, and to be able, when someone says Julian Assange is a stooge of Russia, Julian Assange is a rapist, Julian Assange is in cahoots with Trump, is in cahoots with Putin, there are definite answers which will put a hole in every one of those. Please educate yourself and help educate the rest of America and the rest of the world.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think a lot of people would think that Julian's work
This might is the last question.
Yeah.
Step in and make it a little bit louder so we pick it up with that
Okay,
mic.
I would just assume that Julian would want his work to be continued on, that somebody would want to, you know, he wants him to pick up the torch and run with it. Would you still recommend WikiLeaks as a viable source for members of the press to bring information from whistleblowers who want to point out the crimes of the government?
But again, if the answer's a bit complex, you know, it's a big question. WikiLeaks holds a library of the diplomatic cables stretching back to the Kissinger era, all in searchable form. It's a fabulous library. A retired Department of Foreign Affairs official that I was having morning tea with in Canberra said, you know, don't tell anybody, but we use that facility. So that's one. The second is to establish how a war is from the inside. The Iraq war files and the Afghan war files historically allow that, to understand what contemporary warfare is like and its furious destruction. It's filthy, modern warfare. It really is. You know, you see in the Russian assistance to Syria against the jihadis and Al-Qaeda and Tahrir al-Sham and all of them. So few prisoners. Modern warfare is horrendous. One salvo from one of those rocket things you see going off will destroy everything in 800 square meters. That's modern warfare. So it's really essential for those that get hold of the information to make it available somewhere.
Well, thank you, everyone. The Shiptons have been in 15 cities in less than 15 days, so they are pretty tired. So that concludes our program.
There is